There is a tall tale that has been spread about during Pope Francis's reign of terror over the Latin Mass, which alleges that it is because of the SSPX that the Pope is suppressing the Old Mass. The depth of ineptitude required to formulate such a moribund argument really is astonishing, even for the caliber of intellect that routinely goes after the society. First, this statement is historically inaccurate, as Popes John Paul II, Benedict XVI, and Francis have all made it clear that permissions were given at least in part to Catholic priests to say the Latin Mass because of the SSPX. At the time, it was virtually impossible to attend the Old Mass, if not at an independent chapel or chapel of the SSPX, with few exceptions. Therefore, the quote-unquote problem was the SSPX. The fact that John Paul II viewed the SSPX as a problem is no secret. But it must be noted that the solution to the quote-unquote SSPX problem was not to further restrict the Latin Mass, but to give allowance. Also, the Ecclesia Dei Commission was formed in response to the 1988 consecrations in order to govern traditional Catholic priestly societies in the Church. What this means is that because of the 1988 consecrations, Rome felt it necessary to have more traditional congregations formed. Whether you think this was done to take people away from Lefebvre and the SSPX or not is hardly the point, as the fact remains that more allowance of the traditional Mass was only amplified in response to the continued existence of the Society of St. Pius X. Pope Benedict XVI was very kind to the SSPX and did even more to liberate the Old Mass than his predecessor, while also easing the official canonical situation of the society. So, in the case of Benedict, we find that the Pope was happy to be kind to tradition and the SSPX. There is a myth that Benedict only acted kindly to tradition in order to take souls away from the SSPX, but Benedict himself denied this. Read Sewell's biography. As far as Pope Francis is concerned, he has been even more kind to the SSPX than both his predecessors, having done more to regularize their canonical status than either pope before him. Of course, Pope Francis dropped a proverbial bomb on tradition with his document Traditionis Custodes that effectively put the Latin Mass under the restrictions that John Paul II had put it under, and this has been seen as a step backwards by many supporters of the Old Mass, rightfully so. Now, if Pope Francis is suppressing the Old Mass because of the SSPX, then this would mean he is some sort of manipulative dictator, as he has done more to send Catholics to the SSPX than any pope before him. This would ironically prove that the Pope is a tyrannical figure who treats the faithful poorly, which would only strengthen the argument for a state of necessity and moral certitude in resisting the Pope. In addition, if he is suppressing the Latin Mass because of the SSPX, then this tells us two things. One, if the SSPX is not in schism and is therefore in the Church, which is obvious, then Pope Francis is suppressing the Latin Mass because Catholics are attending Catholic Masses said by Catholic priests. Frankly, that would be insane and make him one of the most egregious tyrants who has ever led the Church, which again would only buttress validation for the state of necessity and therefore vindicate Lefebvre and his priests even more. 2. If the SSPX is in schism and not in the Church, the Pope is suppressing the Latin Mass because a non-Catholic order of priests is using a Catholic rite of Mass. This would also be insane, and again prove the Pope to be a tyrant. It would be like if the Pope were to suppress the rite of St. John Chrysostom said by the Eastern Catholics because Orthodox churches use the same rite. This would mean that the Pope is punishing Catholics because of what non-Catholics are doing. Again, insane. You can't have it both ways. If you want to say the SSPX is in schism and therefore not in the Church, then claiming they are the source of troubles for Catholics in the Church is an absurd and utterly stupid argument. Or, if you think the Pope is suppressing the Mass of all time because Catholics are attending a Catholic Mass said by Catholic priests, then this is equally absurd. Either way, the Pope is an abusive tyrant in either circumstance, and those blaming the SSPX for the tyrant's actions may as well be blaming one brother because an abusive father is beating the other. It is either logical absurdity or a disgusting fit of victim blaming on behalf of the SSPX detractors. This may be one of the lowest IQ arguments ever uttered by the hapless critics of the SSPX, and that's saying a lot.